not normal. Whereas for me, it's everyday occurrence.
Yeah.
Like if I'm between, I'm happy if I'm between 100 and 200.
Yeah, me too.
Generally speaking, that's like great.
Yeah.
So anyway, she was saying that there's about 12% now of type 2 diabetics who are in this group of what happens is it's a problem at the cellular level, but it's not because the cells are too big. It's just maladaptation of the receptors around the cell.
Insulin receptors, yeah.
Anyway.
Last year I was in clinical health class, and we had a whole unit on diabetes, and before that I found that I didn't really know much about type 2, and I didn't know exactly what caused it. I didn't know the difference between type 1 and type 2, even last year.
Wow.
So it was very interesting to learn about it.
Yeah.
And kind of get a perspective of the medical side. So, and we also learned about, I think, 2 other types of diabetes that I didn't even know existed.
Oh yeah, they now have like type 3.
Really?
Right?
I hadn't heard about type 3.
Oh.
I think there was, I forget the actual medical term, but there's diabetes during pregnancy.
Right, gestational.
Right. My teacher actually had that. That was teaching clinical health. And I can't remember the other word. I think it's just a different, like, category of diabetes.
Because I know type 3, what they consider type 3 now, which is relatively new, is somebody who was diagnosed type 2, and then they went on insulin, so they became insulin dependent, which is type 1, but it's not really, but they're saying. So then they become insulin resistant, even though they're taking insulin. So they could be on like 300 to 500 units a day of insulin to try to keep their blood sugars. So then they've completely burnt out their pancreas and their insulin stores and their cells. So it's type 1, type 2, and type 3.
I can't even imagine that.
So, although, I can't either, because at least if we can take insulin, we can control it.
Right.
Manage it. Pretty much, but, yeah.
I've started going through my pump reservoirs in about 2 days. I'm on a very high insulin level.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that new?
No, I've been like that since about 12 years old.
Wonder if it's like teenage.
Yeah, I think so. I think I started having the new hormones, and it messed with I think just how my body like accepted insulin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But
do you feel different?
With more insulin, or yeah, it was. I found that it was harder to manage once I had to start taking more, because from about 12 to 14 years, I went from 9 units of Lantus up to 48, and just recently, before I went on the pump, I was up to 60 units of Lantus.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when I was with my old doctors, they told me, you should not be on this much insulin. You should not be on this much insulin. And I moved here, went to Kaiser, and they're like, that's totally normal. So,
wow.
Right. Moving here, I have like a whole new perspective and thought process towards diabetes.
Yeah.
I'm finding that it's okay to, be on this much insulin, when before I used to feel like almost like guilty for taking that much insulin, which of course didn't help with management. So, yeah.
I mean, you need what you need. There's no,
exactly.
So, and when you switch to the pump, right, is your basal, like, close to what your Lantus was?
I believe I'm taking about 48 units per day. I'm having probably a little bit less than that now, because I was having those lows in the middle of the night. but I'm doing about 2 units per insulin, or 2 units of insulin per hour.
Right. Okay.
And after about 9 o'clock, we put it down to 1.6 units per hour. So I'm definitely on less, considering like how much Lantus I was taking.
Yeah, because that's more like 24 units.
Yeah.
A day.
Yeah.
But see, I think that's partly because of the pump.
Yeah.
Because I think you can get tighter control with the pump. I mean, for one thing, just think about it. Like when you take a shot, I mean, we can talk all day, but when you take a shot of Lantus, that's it for 24 hours.
Exactly,
That's what you're getting every hour, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with the pump, you can go, okay, from 2 to 4 in the morning. And I finally did my blood. This was, to try to see what was going on, because I would have these weird either spikes or drops between 4 and 7 in the morning every day. And it was the same thing. So I had to cut my basal down, like, for a while I was doing a temporary basal thing, and I would reduce it by 75% between 4 and 7 in the morning. And then sometimes I just shut it off if I was feeling lazy and I didn't want to. I was just like, suspend. And I'd wake up and it'd be, 111.
Right.
I'm like, great, I'm not low, because waking up
with lows is, it's not fun.
Oh, but, I mean, that's just one of the many great things about the pump.
Yeah.
That you can get better control. Do you feel like you've
have better control?
Yeah.
Definitely. Mostly because there's less steps. It doesn't take as much time out of your life.
Right? How nice is it to sit down at a meal and go,
yep.
Okay.
Right. And I think the best part about it is that you don't have to do all the calculations in your head,
right.
Or,
one of the biggest ones for me is the insulin on board. To figure out, like, okay, well, first you have to figure out how long your insulin lasts, then your insulin sensitivity, then calculate how high it was to get your correction, and then you're 3 hours later, you're at dinner, and now it's 270, and you want to eat. So that's like 12 calculations that you've got to figure out to come up with that number where the pump goes.
Right.
Beep, beep, beep.
I think it's also the pump has introduced me to a lot of new aspects of diabetes in general. I mean, I didn't. What was I gonna say? Just lost my thought. I didn't know how to calculate active insulin. Because I didn't have a good connection with my doctors in my old place, I wasn't exactly learning the new things I needed to take into account.
Right.
So for years I was doing the same processes that I was taught when I was diagnosed at 7.
Of course.
Right.
Because that's all you know.
Yeah.
Yep.
So with the pump,
same.
I just know a lot more, and it's helping me because I'm just more educated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, just knowing, like, oh, so I have insulin on board and it's still active, just thinking about that concept that, oh, okay, just because I took it 4 hours ago or 6 hours ago, that means there's still this much left, which is going to kick in. So that whole thing of, I remember for years, like, my blood sugar would be high and I'd take a big whopping dose, right? Then it would drop low inevitably because I'd take like 15 units or something.
Yeah.
Okay. Then, of course, guess what? It bounces back high again. And you're doing this back and forth instead of doing that whole graduated, and you can do that with the dual wave. For me, like, that's what I have to do is not take more than like 3 units. Even if it's really high, if it's like 600, I might take 5 units.
Right.
And then the next hour, I'll take 2 more, depending on how fast it's dropping. But then I can not bottom out.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're doing it all manually, you sometimes large doses, like with the 60 units of insulin or Lantus that I was taking, I sometimes had to split it into 3 different shots.
Right.
Because, you try putting 60 units of insulin in one spot at once.
Yeah.
It's not fun.
I'm sure you get depots too.
Yeah. Yeah. Because originally I had to use 2 separate needles because I only had the 50 unit needles until I had to wait until I had my next doctor appointment, and that was about a month. So I was doing that for a month, and it made it hard. But once I got the 100 unit needles, it was much easier. But yeah.
And just think about, I mean, I know Lantus has that, 24-hour thing, but it's hard for me to believe that it never, like when you're taking 60 units, that's all just dispersing it.
Whereas I wouldn't understand how that would work.
Trickle it in. If you need it at like 0.25 units an hour, it can do that, which is just amazing.
Incredible. Okay. Okay, let me check this real quick.